Boom, 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 boom.
What was that? That's our intro music.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of That's Movies.
No,
Brother.
everyone will
Bum,
know.
bum,
Oh my
bum,
gosh, I
bum,
can't believe they
bum,
stole
bum,
that
bum,
from
bum, bum.
Caravan, dude.
That's what we're talking about today, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about some movies. On That's Movies, Brother.
I don't know if that's actually right.
First, we got to talk Tiger King, man. We got to talk Tiger King, man. I know we did an entire episode about it, but a new episode came out, man.
Can I be honest?
A new episode came out today.
Can I be honest?
I only expect your honesty.
Kind of fucking sick of Tiger King, dude.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Done.
Oh my goodness.
I'm done with it.
You're not sick of Tiger King.
I don't know. So this new episode came out, and I was a little excited for it, but I knew that going into it, I was like, this is probably just going to be, I'm pretty sure, did I even say it on our last podcast that it was just going to be like, they're going to try to get as many people back to interview as they could and just talk about basically the response to it and final thoughts. And that's exactly what it is.
I'm not mad about it though, because the documentary did a documentary and they obviously edited it and did all this stuff and they have to make it entertaining. And sure, I'm not saying this wasn't edited at all, but this was a little more, at least from the people that were in the show, like kind of their perspective of the documentary a little more straightforward and not as edited. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that we got a little bit of
I can give you that.
of like what they thought of it and if they thought they were portrayed correctly or, you know, this or this and kind of what they really thought about the situation without being kind of either, who knows, their force-fed lines or, you know, how they edited it to make people seem.
Yeah, it could have been, although it's much more tied with that, with like a name, right? You know, Joel McHale of Community fame. He's basically like, you know, so I mean, if they made stuff up on this, especially since he refers to it as a documentary, I feel like, you know, he'd get a lot of backlash. So it's probably less likely.
He literally asked people, do you think you were represented very well?
Right.
And
yeah, so I'm not worried about that part.
Right.
About them like trying to force feed fake information or something like that. What I am worried about is that the people that they actually were talking to were probably not being super honest with everything. And I feel like he softballed them questions. It felt, you know, especially like guys like Jeff Lowe and Robert Kirkman, man. He did not go hard on them at all. He basically just let them say whatever they wanted to say, which is, I feel like, and I mean, you know, we're big interviewers now, so we can talk about this kind of stuff. But you know, you kind of have to, you know, if someone says something, you know, like that's seems wrong, like, you know, Jeff Lowe's basically just going like, well, you know, yeah, I didn't do it. It was totally made up, man. The documentary screwed me over, and then you don't challenge that with any of the evidence that they brought forth in the episode or in the documentary, then what are you doing, right? You're just letting a guy say he's innocent when you know that's what he's always going to say. I'm not getting anything out of that. You got to kind of put him in a corner a little bit, especially when they're in kind of that position. And
especially if you're asking the person who, like he himself said, they made the villain of the documentary, whether he's supposed to be or not, the villain's not going to say they're a villain.
So I feel like, you know, McHale should have been trying to defend the documentary a little bit. And maybe, go for it.
I was talking to our good old friend Colin earlier today.
Oh, friend of the cast.
He was even saying that, like, it did seem like his interview with Jeff was not as in depth as some of the others. In that, and I was thinking, yeah, maybe what he did was, you know, because obviously you have to reach out and get approved, like, hey, do you want to be on this? You know, it's a TV show. It's like, hey, do you want to be on this? And they got to sign contracts and do all that. And they might have made some deal where it was like, yeah, but you can't ask me this or this or this, because it's an interview style, you know, just kind of thing like that. So maybe he was kind of forced to not ask him super in-depth questions because he didn't want to have to go there, because he didn't, regardless of whether he was,
he might not have come back for it if they,
example, Carol Baskin, where's she at? You know, they reached out to her.
Yeah, but she's out of everybody the most pissed because this double down on it.
Yeah, regardless of whether you killed your husband or not, you don't want to be associated with a thing where people think you did, whether you did or not. Especially if you didn't, but especially if you did, you don't want people to get on your scent.
Do you think it makes her look more guilty that she didn't come back and talk to him?
I guess it kind of depends on what the episode was. This was a very open episode. This is not, now that I know this episode was a
wrap up.
I wouldn't have blamed her if it was like the rest of the documentary where they, have a little more editing and can make it seem a certain way. But this one, they still can. Of course they can. They can cut out certain questions or do whatever they want. But it seemed like it was a little more just kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
So maybe because this would have given her a better chance now that I've saw that. Yeah, but for her, how do you know if you're her that they're going to allow you to kind of give your stance? What if they just peg her with really tough questions that either she doesn't want to answer or make her look bad? So that's a really hard question because from her perspective, she might not have known what they were going to ask and just wanted to distance herself from it, which I wouldn't blame her if she didn't kill her husband. And I also wouldn't blame her if she did kill her husband, that she doesn't want to be associated with it anymore.
Yeah, I guess it is really hard. She's in a tough spot, even though I think she did it. Yeah.
But I did write. Oh, sorry, you go first.
I was just gonna say that I just feel like I didn't really. Well, one, it seemed like the show was kind of like changing its stance, because it didn't even really feel like it was made by the same people. It's so strange because basically everyone for these interviews came back and basically just said, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, Joe's terrible. He should be in jail." That's not the vibe you get from.
But that's
the rest of the documentary.
I like this episode because I think for a documentary, first of all, you have to make it entertaining. You have to spice things up a little bit. And I think if they just went out and said, "Well, Joe is a terrible person," and or maybe not a complete terrible person, but he definitely deserves, like 100% deserves to be in jail. XYZ. It's not as interesting of a documentary. If you paint villains here and there, and then you kind of make it seem like, but should he or shouldn't he?
Well, you're kind of betraying all the information of the rest of the documentary, though, because you're setting up this whole. They basically, what it feels like now with this episode is that they had a trajectory that they wanted to go for, where they wanted Joe to look sympathetic and like he was wrongfully imprisoned, and they wanted to set up these other characters as the villains, but it wasn't actually what actually happened. So for 7 episodes, they take you on this ride and they make you root for this guy. And then in the last episode, they talk to everybody and they was like, "Oh yeah, he was actually just the bad guy." So it's like, so everything before then was just kind of a waste of time, because really this story was a lot more straightforward the way you're presenting it than it was told to me. It's really just a bad guy did bad things and he went to jail. That's it.
But I wouldn't say that you're just trying to make him just like he was framed. I think it was supposed to be a question. I think it was not supposed to be straightforward. He was framed. I think it was supposed to be a maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, when it might seem maybe more towards in real life, maybe he wasn't. And sure, there are still questions. Jeff Lowe still seems like the kind of guy that, for example, like we said, doesn't want to talk about a lot of things and does really seem sneaky. And I mean, look, if you have an open look, okay, you got personal here, dudes. If you want to have a relationship where you have an open relationship, bro, that's on you. So it's hard. I don't want to just like judge people for having open relationships.
It's wrong. He's evil for it. I'll do it for you.
It's just weird because his wife seems. Is it just me, or does she kind of seem a little off-putted by the fact that he's kind of into the nanny?
Well, she in this was like, she's hot and stuff like that. It feels like she's trying to play the part, but it doesn't work. Like it's not really what she wants to do.
I don't like it. I don't like it. It's weird.
It feels like she's just, kind of around for whatever money I guess he does have. I still don't know if the guy's rich or poor or what, but it seems like
they didn't dive into it. And I feel like
she's just around because of his status, not because of him. So who really cares if he's
and that's all based on what we've seen. And if you like, if there's people out there that have open relationships and they're both cool with it, then
maybe they're all super in love. I don't see it. It seems like a mess to me, but I guess it could be.
So I want to go through a little bit of this though, because I did write down some notes while I was watching this, because so for example of how they seem to portray people a certain way in the documentary and things change, like you said in this last episode, Rinky, the dude without legs, at the end of the documentary, he was like, man, I helped manage that farm for 18 years, why didn't, or 8 years, whatever, however long, for a very long time. He's
Yeah.
like, and he was one of the few people that didn't testify. And he's like, why didn't they talk to me? And he seemed really sad, and it almost made it look like he wanted, because they said in the documentary, kind of no one was there to help, like to have his back, to have Joe's back. And then they
Right.
showed Rinky, and it sounded like he wanted to be there because he would have had his back. At least that's how it seemed to be portrayed. And then in this, he's like, no. He went crazy. He shot out one of my windows and blew up my golf cart and all this stuff. And it's like, and he said like he hadn't talked to Joe in years. Like since he went into jail, he's like, I haven't talked to him because he just wouldn't. If I did, he just wouldn't stop talking. Like he didn't seem like he liked him either.
The original documentary has all these, most everyone in this was so like they had, they knew that Joe has issues and stuff like that, but they were still kind of like on his side and kind of felt bad for him and stuff like that. And pretty much everybody in this new episode is just like, fuck the guy. And I mean, well,
to be fair, the guy, what was his name? The dude with the long hair who still works on the farm with Jeff.
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but I know you're talking about.
He was saying, even in the original documentary, like in the last episode, he was like, "Yep, he's guilty," and he was like, "I think it was him." He goes, "No one was there for him." Somebody in the documentary said no one was there for him, even the people that he worked with. So they kind of said it, but it wasn't as clear as they kind of made it seem in this episode. So basically, my few wrapped up thoughts about kind of everything and how I feel, because again, the entire last episode, we're going based off, I tried to make it very clear, kind of give the disclaimer that we're just speaking off what we saw and from the people we interviewed, and that's, we can only go off what we saw, and we don't know everything. I try to make that very blanket statement so people aren't like, oh, well, this is what happened, this is what these people believe on this podcast. After talking to the people that we talked to, watching the documentary, and then watching obviously this last episode, the vibe I get, my kind of opinions, is that Joe was a really nice guy and he started off with really good intentions. And as time went on, because he was always a character, but then you got cameras involved and they started making a documentary. The issue is the people that we talked to before were not around during the documentary. So I believe everything they said, and I get why they would believe that, they don't think that he did this kind of stuff or all of that. But when you get pushed, some people just can't, especially when you have that kind of personality where it's the tension all the time. When you start getting it, you see it go to people's head all the time. I mean, you see that with celebrities. So like, and this guy is also, he's a crazy dude. He was a crazy dude before this, but this just escalated it. So my opinion, I think, is that like once all that started happening, it just became less and less about the animals. And then all he cared about was his own fame and his own attention. And I think Saf said it pretty well, where like, okay, so basically he said that he agrees that Joe should be in prison, but he doesn't want to see him die in prison, because he mentioned that Thanksgiving dinner he would make for everybody every year, and that he would take the jacket off of his back for anyone. But he was a really nice guy, but he definitely did some wrong, and that justice was served by doing this.
Right.
But so there might have been more collusion with it as well. There might have been a little bit of a setup and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there was because everyone in this freaking show is crazy, bro. Like everyone. But
pretty much.
I think that's kind of how I feel about it. I think that, it started that way and things just kind of took a turn. Because, dude, at the end, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. I'll give you a chance in a second. At the end, the last person I interviewed in this episode, and remember how we brought up to these people about did you ever hear about him killing horses? And then there was that story where he was there and someone dropped their horse and was like, I just need to put my horse somewhere where he can have a good life. And then just goes around and kills it right there, after the person.
Here's my big thing is that
you think that's fake?
Kirkman, I think, is lying his ass off.
You do.
And so the interesting thing here is that Kirkman obviously is, a kind of a TV and film kind of guy, is trying to make a show with him originally. And he even states in this interview that he did for this last episode that he has, kind of given away his journalistic integrity in order to get the shot and basically get what he wanted out of for a show and ultimately for money. So it doesn't It's not, he can basically say, especially since now that Joe's in jail and he can't really even defend himself, he can basically say whatever he wants. And his story doesn't make any sense. Why would Joe take just Robert over to this new horse and have this whole big villain speech in front of him and then shoot a horse? What's the point? The guy's filming everything he does, and he's not on his side. This doesn't make any sense.
I did think that was weird. So again, even all this, we don't know what in this is true and who's lying. And I know that they said that, Saf found out that he was, killing or euthanizing tigers, and there is apparently some evidence that I guess he was doing that, even if they weren't.
I do think euthanized tigers probably happened,
even if they weren't sick, just to make room in cages because they weren't making money off of them anymore. It's just like there was some messed up stuff going on from what it seems.
But that story is such a Saturday morning villain on a Western, kind of a story. It's not something that really happens. It's just, and it doesn't really make sense.
Bro, I would, dude. If anybody said anything happened with any of these people, not that I'm just going to believe them blindly. Bro, these people are crazy. Dude.
They are
Everyone
nuts.
in this whole show have done things just regardless if it was for show or not. It was filmed. It happened.
Mm-hmm.
Those actions we saw, some of the actions I saw in this show, bro, are like, dude, how are there people out here doing this? Like, these people are crazy, dude. And I think that's just the point of the show is it's crazy. I think people might take certain things too far and like have a really strong stance. Not that you're not allowed to, like, that's great, but you got at the end of the day go, I don't really know what's going on. Like, I don't know. I wasn't there. So like, and you watched a documentary. If anything, I feel like this last episode was more clear than any of the others. There's always a filter on this kind of stuff. So I did like that we were able to talk to people, and I'm really, honestly, we were hoping to talk to more people that had differing opinions that didn't work out. And I would have loved to get that just so we could get a more unbiased kind of view or less, filtered view of what,
or just a different one. Everything's has their biases, and everything's filtered.
Yeah. That's why I changed bias to filtered, because we're not really editing much of this. It's just what we asked, we're getting those answers and we're putting them out there. And sure, those people could be lying too. That can always happen, but it's like, I don't know. I wish that we could have that. And look, as much as Nate says he's done with all his Tiger King stuff, if anybody has any contacts with somebody that works for Carol Baskin, we will talk to them.
We want to know Carol.
You guys know anyone that works?
I'm done with Tiger King, but she's not a Tiger King, bro. I ain't done with her.
But yeah, that's kind of my last, I think, kind of thoughts on everything.
I just thought it was the one last thing I wanted to kind of bring up. What I thought was interesting was that I'm sure you also saw that story about the speaking of Saf, about the misgendering and all that kind of stuff article that came out. I love how in this they asked about it, and he basically goes, "I'm not."
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Way
I'm sorry. I'm part of the problem.
To be fair, though, we watched an entire 7 episodes of being.
But the whole point is that Saf basically said, "Yeah, I don't care." Everyone else seemed to care, but I don't care. And so that article just came out, was just trying to generate, headline and false drama where there wasn't any. So I just thought that was funny.
Oh, another thing about crazy stuff happening that I wouldn't put it past. The guy, Josh, who was his campaign manager.
Yep.
He was like, yeah, crazy stuff happened there. Like at 7 or 8 a.m., like the windows would rattle from like lions roaring and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he literally saw like such crazy stuff. He was at his desk and saw a guy get his finger get off. I can't speak. Saw his finger get bit off by a bear outside his window while working. I hope that story is true.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't. Poor man with your lost finger there, but that's insane, dude. Just another day of work, like out the window, bro. How do you work somewhere like that? I don't understand. I would have left that place so long ago.
What he kind of said about getting some kind of help and stuff like that, it actually kind of made a lot of sense to me, where it was, I think Joel in the interview was basically kind of like, did Joe Exotic ever get any kind of help for what happened? And he said he went to what did he say he went to? Something crazy? A shaman. I don't even really know what that means.
Is that a character like in a D&D?
Yeah. Yeah.
Our next DD, I'm be a shaman.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a pet. My right-hand man is going to be Joe Exotic.
I believe a shaman is usually like a Native American kind of healer or something like that. That could be really wrong. Don't call me a racist. But yeah, it just makes a lot of sense that that idea was never even brought into question of like, hey, maybe I should go see a therapist because my
and the fact that he never even got help after he saw that tragic.
Yeah, I'm sure if he starts to go fund me, I'm sure he can raise that kind of dough.
Now, again, to make things kind of, it is a bleak topic because it is kind of the most tragic thing in the entire show. But apparently, from seeing the documentary, it seemed like it was on purpose. And like, yeah, he kind of went crazy from being on the farm for so long and all this. And then Josh said that it seemed very much like an accident.
Oh, I didn't get that impression. I also thought that it seemed like it was an accident.
Really? I don't know. Maybe I have to go back and like rewatch that episode. But I thought people were saying like he just couldn't take it anymore. He would, because they were saying he felt trapped. They're saying Travis felt.
Yeah, I do think he felt that. But I just don't think that they were necessarily related. He might have been in kind of this weird like subconscious state where he, was just so used to being around guns and like, shooting them all the time and not, obviously being high and shit like that all the time as well. He just didn't really even care. You know what I mean? So that's why he would do such like putting a gun at your own head, believing it wasn't going to kill you so nonchalantly. But I don't think that like, because that would be what odd timing, right? You walk in, you think I'm gonna kill myself, and then some guy just happens to mention like, oh, that won't fire without the, magazine in it. And it's like, oh, yeah, and then tries it out, and then it works. Like, you know what I mean? That's just odd.
I mean, yeah, but I've heard some crazy stories about stuff like that, but I don't know. It's just crazy that even him, who like was there for all of it, like no one tried to get him help, or I don't know. It is a pretty
yeah. It's very interesting that of all things, this is the apparently most viewed or most successful. I don't know exactly what the metric is for that, but documentary series of all time. It's been seen by the most people, or some kind of mixture of that logic. I don't know what that says. That's what the guy in the interview was saying.
Well, it's been the number one. It's at least been the number one on Netflix for longer than anything else on Netflix. It's held the number one spot.
But he specifically said along the lines of this: what does it feel like to be a part of the biggest documentary of all time, basically
in history? Yeah. Which, to be fair, I would also say is true with Netflix and everybody, especially during this time, everybody being inside. The amount of people that watched it, I'm sure it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not questioning that. I'm just kind of saying like it's kind of a crazy idea. I mean, it might just be a luck thing, just a timing situation more than anything. But it's just an odd observation.
Oh, and also apparently, who said it? Somebody, was it the last guy? Was it Rick? Yeah, and again, you think he's lying, so I guess take this with a grain of salt. But
yeah,
he was saying that like Joe was apparently terrified of big cats.
Yeah, again, it's just I could probably comb through the documentary again and see all the times he was interacting one-on-one with cats, and they couldn't have always been blind or always been on tranquilizers, or always in some situation that would make them.
Yeah, and if you're terrified of them, getting in a cage with them
every day, I mean, that other people would have noticed that. Why was it only Robert who brought that up? Why didn't anyone else say he was terrified of big cats?
Yeah, it is kind of.
If strange. they all don't like him, they're not protecting him for the most part. I mean, I can understand how somebody like Saf probably wouldn't say it because he didn't seem like somebody kind of vindictive enough to maybe bring up something like that about him. But Eric Cowie, the long-haired guy, he would have probably said something. Jeff Lowe would have said something for sure, even if it wasn't true. You know what I mean? Like it would have been brought up. So that guy, I don't know. I think he's just trying to make money again. And, he fucked off to Norway and he figures I can say whatever I want. What are they going to do? Chase me down in Norway?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Crazy show, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as we talked about the seriousness of this, I feel like we haven't even given some of the crazy, like, I want to mention, like, I remember rewatching part of this and seeing this episode again when Saf got his arm bit off by a tiger. And then the first thing Joe does is walk into the gift shop and goes, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, before you hear on the news, I'm gonna tell you myself. We had an incident. One of the employees stuck their arm through a cage and tore his arm off. The tiger tore his arm off, just like straightforward, like no hesitation. Like, I can give you your money back or whatever. I'm like, dude, what? Like, I'd be like, what do you say to that?
I mean, I don't know, but I was actually, if anything, when I remember seeing that scene, I was almost kind of like a little bit like, man, I feel like some people would just come out and like wouldn't be able to deal with it or like come up with some stupid excuse, but like he was just honest with his patrons. And I mean, he should have the one thing he did that I didn't like was like, or we can like we reschedule, like I can keep your money. And it's like, come on, dude, just give everybody a refund and send them home.
It's an option. He said you can like get a refund or reschedule. I mean, if that's an option, then they come back and come back. I'm
just saying, but I honestly, that part didn't bother me at all. I was like, okay, he went out there and he faced it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people would just, I can imagine some owners of a place like that putting that onto like a manager or something like that, like telling someone else to go tell the people that you had an employee have their arm bitten off and you go deal with the crowds. I'll stay away in the office and try to hide from the responsibility of it. Because I mean, even if staff, fucked up and didn't do the feeding or whatever correctly, and it was entirely his fault, then some of the responsibility still does go on to Joe, for creating the environment, which that can happen. So
I am never going to find a recover from this.
Yeah, that is a funny meme though. Still,
oh, bro, that show. It was a good one.
Yeah,
it was a good one.
It's so weird because, kind of what we like to do more. I mean, I never even really considered the idea when we started this that we'd really be talking about any documentary. So it's been strange. But, when we talk about movies, it's so detached from reality that like pretty much any opinion we hold is completely harmless at the end of the day, right? I mean, and I'm not saying that we could even potentially do that much harm with our size, but I'm just saying that, there's, if we love or hate a movie or think it's bad or good, it doesn't matter. But for something like this, if it comes out in like a year or so or a few months or whatever, that this documentary was almost completely fabricated, the documentarians lied a bunch of stuff, and or if like Joe Exotic gets out of jail or something like that because of the documentary, and they lied,
he said
we were kind of part of
president, bro.
Yeah. And did you see that Trump actually like said like in a joking way like, I'll look into it?
Yep. I'm so ready to hear. I want to hear Donald Trump's reaction. I want to hear your conversation with Joe Exotic and Donald Trump. Yeah. So I looked into it.
Honestly, I watched it, and Carol, we're coming after you. All right, okay. Checking the septic tank.
Look,
some terrible Trump impressions coming out of this.
We all know that I'm good at finding hidden emails. We know. Oh no, we're getting political on the podcast.
Yeah, I know. Dude. But my point is that, if we endorse or say, that we like the show, and then it comes out that they lied and they were trying to get criminals off or something weird and crazy like that, it's just, I hate to the idea that I'd be super a part of it. So it just makes working with real life stuff harder,
Yeah, but listen, we are guys, listen out here. We're two dudes who enjoy watching things and talking about how we feel in our opinions. And I multiple times blanket statemented saying, look, we can only go off what we were shown, and I know that all or some of this could be fake. With that being said, I'm now going to proceed with my thoughts. The end. And if you want to hate me because of that, go for it. I'm cool with it. At that point, I don't care. Because, yeah, of course, I said shame on you if you make a documentary that's all fake and you twist things and take somebody's life and make it awful. That don't do that. It's horrible. Don't do that to somebody.
Yeah, I guess that's
your person.
Kind of my greater point is that it seems like we're kind of.
But I'm.
Oh, you going? We're kind of starting to talk over each other. It's my fault. Anyway, so I guess that was kind of my point, is that this last episode, it seems like maybe the documentary wasn't made with truth being at the forefront of importance, and instead with dramatization being more important to them, being entertaining being more important. And I think that's kind of sketchy ground for a documentary, because people go into this thinking that this documentary is trying to be as true as possible, when really they should be thinking this is a dramatization of the events.
Yeah. Which, again, that's why I blanket statement everything. That's why I said I actually liked this last episode, because it kind of did a little bit of what we were trying to do our previous one where we interview people was, look, I just want to interview and hear what happened from a standpoint of, we're not going to edit what you say, and get your opinion from someone who actually worked there. So that's why I did like this episode, and that I am saying that, that's my opinion on what I think actually happened based on what I know, and it could be completely wrong, is that I think that he started out with good intentions, things changed and all that kind of stuff. So if anybody else wants to come forth with more information, maybe. I'm not somebody, and neither is Nate, that we don't want to just do another episode and do stuff just to do it because it's topical. Yeah, that's great to do topical stuff, but we're going to give our opinions on the topical stuff and not just repeat things over and over and over. We need new stuff. Yeah. So look, you got to talk about Carol Baskin, or you got some connections, hit us up. But yeah,
speaking
I do want to say,
speaking of new stuff, did you have something else to say about Tiger King?
Yeah, I do. Really quickly, is while we wrap this up, stop talking about Tiger King for the foreseeable future. I do want to say thank you to everybody that has listened to our last episode, because it was definitely a big success as far as, so, it was great to be able to talk to these people. And so I just want to thank everybody who has come over to the podcast. And I hope you guys are interested in talking more about other movies and TV and stuff, because that's what we be doing over here, guys. And yeah. So we're going to talk more stuff and let less Tiger King from here on.
Yeah.
But yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. I mean, yeah, for sure. This past episode has been a pretty big bump for us. So we got hopefully a whole new band of listeners. So hey guys, hey.
Stick around, guys.
But speaking of new stuff, let's talk about some 6-year-old movies. Yeah,
6-year-old movies.
Mm-hmm. I think they both are pretty much 2014 movies. Both the ones that we wanted to kind of go back and talk about.
Yeah, when did
Whiplash is 2014.
I think that
I think it might have
been 2013.
13. Oh yeah, it is 2013. But I don't think I didn't see it. Oh, it wasn't released like theatrically until 2014. But yeah.
All right. Yeah. The idea behind this, the reason we're talking about such old movies is some of these movies you guys might, I say some, we're talking about 2 movies, and you guys might not have heard of them, because I never heard of Whiplash, which is the one I picked, because, I never heard of Enemy either. You told me to watch that, and I hadn't heard of it. But I haven't heard of Whiplash either until I was watching Oscar stuff that year, and I was like, oh, it's nominated for Best Picture. I guess I'll check it out. And
really?
Most people that I say, have you seen Whiplash, or have you heard it? Like, no, I haven't even heard it. I don't even know what it is. So I know there's a lot of people out there that haven't seen it. Now, I think there might be more people that have seen Whiplash than Enemy, but yeah, it is. There's still lesser known movies, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Enemy might actually have a bit of an advantage to an extent, because Whiplash had a bigger box office, but Enemy's been on like Netflix and other streaming services for a long time. Just because it is, a lot of these smaller ones. So if you're a one of these guys who just kind of goes around and tries weird movies on streaming services all the time, kind of like how I do, you probably have come across it. And Jake Gyllenhaal and all that. But so the idea, we kind of want to just go back and
welcome to a new segment, boys. Welcome to a new segment.
You got us a jingle for that new segment?
We got a new segment for you. And then you just say what it is, because that's all I got. Because I don't have a name of it for you yet.
It's stuff we liked. That's it. That's the name.
Yeah, basically we pick. Me and Nate have issues when people say, "What's your favorite movie?" Because we like a lot of different movies for a lot of different reasons. So the idea was to pick one of our favorites that's in that top group of if I had to pick a favorite, it's in that contender group,
right?
Is to pick one of our favorites and then talk about them, why we like it or why the other person maybe doesn't like it, or why. Because at the end of talking about both these, I think we end up kind of comparing them as far as, oh, well, which one did you like better? And I know to an extent you don't like comparing movies, but I want to. I want to try to see, like,
sure,
at the end of this, which one do we like better and why? And why do you? So
I did think it was interesting because when I watched, you know, I had obviously seen Whiplash. We have talked about Whiplash before, and you knew going into this that I liked that movie, obviously, and I still do. Spoilers, but it was interesting to watch it right after I rewatched Enemy because I noticed some very weird similarities between the two that I don't know if you like also noticed, especially about like how it's shot. Like they're both kind of shot as like these kind of like dark, gringy kind of. I don't know what the best word for.
They have like a tint to them almost.
Especially that yellowish color they both have, because obviously, like, you know, concert lighting in Whiplash, and then kind of like neon apartment lighting in Enemy. But they're both kind of shot in the same like color grade almost, and it's weird because they're so different at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are going to talk about Whiplash first.
Yeah, sure. Cool.
So Whiplash came out, and just so you guys know, this is spoilers. You guys haven't seen these movies, go watch these movies.
Sure, I think these are both definitely worth a watch.
That's my summary of what I want to say without spoiling. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
Whiplash. So So Whiplash is about a kid. His name is Andrew Neiman. He's basically an ambitious jazz drummer who goes to Schaefer Conservatory, and top music school in the country. And then his teacher, Terrence Fletcher, basically his instructor has very intense teaching methods to try to make his students, specifically Andrew Neiman in this movie, become one of the greats by pushing them to their absolute limit. And we watch as the main character Andrew goes through this process and how he reacts to these very intense teaching methods and his character arc along that. That's basically my summary of the movie. Anything I'm leaving out, buddy?
No, that's pretty much it. It's a classic story of like the tough love mentor versus that makes, you know, a talented kid in whatever, or, you know, protagonist in something into an extraordinary one through this like method of like beating them down, almost making them good out of sheer anger. It's kind of how I take it. But man, this movie is I think mostly all about moments, right?
Bro, okay, can I just start off by saying I love this movie, and I just remind myself because I've seen it a few times. I've seen it quite a few times, and it's not that I forget how much I like it, but I almost forget how much I like it. Like, I know I really like this movie, and it's very up there for me, but after watching this movie, especially the end, and after wrapping up, I just remember like how good of a movie this is. It's so good, bro.
I love the last
movies. It's like the last like 20 minutes, dude. 15 minutes. That ending lasts a long time, and we'll get there because I kind of want to go through it a little bit kind of throughout the movie in order. But it made me it just hypes me up, bro, every time. All right. So yeah, do you have a couple of things you want to say about the general overarching, like you said, how it's shot or anything like that before we like go through kind of the story?
No, I mean, well, yeah, I talked a little bit about how it's shot, and it's very interesting because it's a musical movie, and I don't know if you knew this, but
it's a musical, guys, lots of singing.
Well, it's made by the same guy who made La La Land.
And I love La La Land.
Yes, but you could probably see the huge difference, even though they're both musical movies.
You can't
not musicals.
You haven't seen La La Land, dude.
No, I haven't. But okay, well then let me ask you a question. Is there a huge difference in how this
they're
movie
basically the same movie?
Okay.
No, yes, there's a difference, yeah, in cinematography and everything like that. But that movie is a musical. This movie, there is music in it. There is jazz music.
Yeah,
it's
of course, it's not a musical. Yeah, I'm not saying that they should be exactly the same. I'm kind of expounding on the range of Damien Chazelle here, because those movies are so different, and but they're both, I guess, have the same kind of core musical.
And they are both, I know you haven't seen it, I like them, but they are both just acknowledged to be really good award nominated movies.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. But yeah, that's about it if you want to just go into it.
All right. So yeah, this movie is really good.
Nice.
And when I was watching it, I was also taking notes because I've seen it a lot. So I really want to kind of dive into some nitty gritty stuff. And I was realizing how much the editing and cinematography allowed me to get the kind of perspective that I have on it. And I think helped me like it even more, because there was a lot of mix of steady shots and then a lot of like handheld shaky shots in this film, and they were specifically placed during specific moments, like very intense moments, which there are quite a few, but there was a lot of shaky shots, especially when one of the first intense moments between Neiman and Fletcher is when he gets on the drums for the first time in the studio band, and he's like, were you rushing or were you dragging?
Yeah, that whole bit. Yeah,
not quite my tempo. And and there's that whole back and forth, and then eventually after he is like, oh, you're rushing, you're dragging, all this stuff, and he keeps retrying, and then he chucks a chair at his face, and it gets very intense. And when Fletcher's character storms over to him, that's one of the first times I noticed it. When he storms over, it wasn't even like the camera was by Neiman, so it wasn't like it was following him. It was following him getting closer, but it was shaking. And I don't know how they did it, but they did it very well, and it made that moment so much more intense. And that happened a lot throughout the movie when there are intense moments, and I really like that.
Yeah, I really like how it seemed like a lot of times, especially in between Simmons and Teller, you'll see the camera linger on the reaction of whoever is being spoken to, opposed to whoever's speaking, and between the cutbacks, and that only works if you have really strong performances going on camera. I feel like if if you're not confident in who you're showing reacting to who's talking, it's not going to work.
And that's another reason I say I like this movie a lot. One of the first things I say about this movie is the acting between those two characters, which are, they obviously had the most screen time. Miles Teller, who plays Andrew Neiman, and then J.K. Simmons, who plays Terrence Fletcher, are fantastic. And they went up to the very top of my list of like actors after watching this movie, at least for that time being. Yeah.
Do you like a lot of the other stuff that Miles Teller has done?
He's
kind of fallen off.
Seen a ton. I think I watched, what was that movie where he was with War Dogs?
Yep.
I liked War Dogs, bro.
I like War Dogs a lot.
I thought that was really good. Like, it had a lot of humor in it, but it was also very, there were grounded moments. It was intense, and it was fun. But the actors, like, they actually played their characters really well, and it wasn't too over the top for me. I really liked it.
It's just funny because I'm pretty sure what gave this movie came out first. I was trying to think. I thought that what made Miles Teller like big was the Divergent series. I thought that was like his first big.
I thought so too.
Kind of entry, but Whiplash came out before Divergent did.
Really?
Yeah.
No, you're lying.
They're the same year. But Divergent 2014. It was in March, and I'm pretty sure Whiplash had already. Whiplash was Whiplash went to Sundance in January 2014. So it had been filmed it had already been done. So it's a little weird.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought that the first thing I saw him in was Divergent. But yeah, so another reason that I really like this movie is it is able to look, this is a very intense thing, and similar to what I said about Marriage Story, about how Marriage Story is able to break down a scenario. A lot of dramas find a scenario that is kind of out there and not normal, that doesn't happen all the time, but maybe could happen, and then they make it very intense or stuff like that. But Marriage Story was able to take this thing that happens all the time, divorce and all that kind of stuff, and show this story of something that actually happens, not something that we're just watching happening that might not happen. And to be fair, this movie is more of along the lines of not like Marriage Story, where this is a very specific thing. But there were a lot of elements in the movie that were relatable, that really helped pull you into the other stuff for me. So having this stuff that was, stuff that actually happens and how you feel. And one of those examples is the awkward relationship that he had with his girlfriend, even though it didn't last very long. They weren't in a lot of scenes, but the first date, and even like when he was asking her out, the few moments of humor that they have in this movie kind of does make you chuckle. And even it's not supposed to make you laugh out loud, but it makes you chuckle in like that's kind of awkward, or that's funny, but not like laugh out loud, and like completely ridiculous to take you away from the overall like theme and tone of the movie.
Yeah, it helps you solidify who he is, because I mean, he's this, kind of super driven, and by the end of it, just over like pretty confident, jazz musician. And then but in his normal life he is nothing like that. He gets pushed around by his family, who don't get what he's into, and obviously his relationship is weird, awkward, and he and ended abruptly. And in his normal just everyday life, he's just kind of a goof, a goober.
And I think that he even, like, the process of what he was going through with Fletcher, inflicting this kind of harsh teaching on him, made him that way. Because at the beginning, I'm very under the impression that he was a nice dude who, like you said, kind of just a regular goof kind of dude. And he did get some kind of confidence, obviously, when he got the part, being a core drummer. And then he just completely flipped the switch when his confidence got boosted, and he let it get to his head when he just completely and utterly just annihilated his girlfriend, dude.
Yeah.
Like that was harsh. Like, I don't think that he always was that kind of guy that had that intention. And that's why I like watching movies. Like I said, when it makes you feel things, and you could like see this guy going through all this stuff, and like he was just being really torn down. And then he had this thing and had this confidence, and he just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed and letting it go on the wrong people and in the wrong directions. And then by the end of the movie, he calls her back, his ex-girlfriend, and he's like, maybe we should get together. And then obviously you find out she's with somebody else. And it's a really nice, I think, transformation of this character, and makes you feel for him, even when he becomes not so nice for a while there. You know that happens. Then he gets torn down again, and then you can support him and have his back again when he's kind of torn down completely.
I think it's interesting for the viewer, because you're kind of conflicted for him, because while you do realize that, like, to be great, it has to be like the driving part of your life. It has to kind of be what you're about. If you want to be one of the best ever drummers, or the best ever pretty much anything, you have to be like in it 100%. But at the same time, I think people are kind of naturally view balance as healthy. So you should be able to also, while being 100% invested in something, you should also be able to keep up a relationship. You should also be able to be a normal person. And that J.K. Simmons, what was his name in the movie? I can never remember. Fletcher. He's not. He's really good at what he does, but he is insane, right? I mean, he's nuts. Yeah. So you see that rub off on our main character, who kind of begins his journey as a balanced human being, very good at what he does. I mean, obviously talented, but more balanced, and he feels more healthy. And then by the end of it, he's like, he's getting into car crashes and he doesn't even care. He's still running in and trying to play and perform. And obviously he's cutting off ties with girlfriends, and he just kind of becomes this whole other person. And you're kind of like happy for him that he's kind of like winning, when it regards to music, but in every other facet of his life, he's kind of falling apart for it. So I really like that kind of dynamic that the movie kind of presents for you.
Yeah, I think that's another like kind of message it's trying to say is as much as you might want something, you also like can't let it consume you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he let Fletcher allow it to consume him. Like he was that driving force, and at the end of the day, obviously he has to make that decision because he's his own person, but he allowed Fletcher to kind of push that mentality of letting it consume him, which pushed him over the edge, which is why in the end, when he kind of tries to get back at him, seems like he's at least, I hope, you don't really see much after that or anything, but he's doing it because he's like, I'm done with you, I'm done with this. And it almost is where he breaks through, like you're saying, that they have to continue to push and fight to be great, and that was his pushing moment, and you hope that he can at least after that learn how to balance things while becoming, one of the greats.
Right.
And then hold on, I got something. I had some notes. I'm just trying to go through them real quick.
I'm all ears.
Okay. So as crazy as like Fletcher is, and it also does have to do with just the performance of how good the actors are. There is something, as much as you do feel bad for Neiman, and I think that if this movie was done in a way where all you do is feel bad for Neiman the entire thing, I wouldn't like it, and I think a lot of people wouldn't like it, because like I just feel bad for this dude. But there was something entertaining about watching this guy just lose his mind, because it was done so well, because it was doing this weird dynamic to the main character of Neiman where it was breaking him, like it was breaking him down, but building him up at the same time, but obviously in the wrong ways, which you see when he obviously lashes out to his girlfriend and was like, yeah, you're going to be just another loser and not one of the greats, and that's why you can't see me, right? And he's like, yeah, basically that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, you're awful. You're a horrible person right now. Stop.
Do you want me to blow your mind right quick just
Please.
about that? The girl who plays the girlfriend, it's Supergirl.
Yeah. I found that out later.
I was just looking at the IMDb page. I was like, oh my god, she's Supergirl.
So she became
on the CW show.
She became a superhero, and you're sitting at home playing your stupid drums, dude.
Ooh, a new drum, cool, bro.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but that show's terrible.
Even the relationship that he had like with his dad, the one time where he was at the table with the rest of his family and even his dad was kind of not super nice to him, but the rest of the movie, like, I don't know, that it was also another really nice grounded touch, I think, having that nice relationship with his dad where, at the end when he kind of gets not booed off stage but runs off stage after getting humiliated, like he gets that embrace, and then his dad looks through the door when he goes back and plays the drums and just kind of shows everybody up. And you see that look on his face where I think the dad finally gets the talent and the pure passion that like goes behind what his son is doing.
You're talking about the end, right? When he's like peering through the doorway. Yeah. It's almost weird, that scene. The expression on his face is almost a little bit like, it's almost like he's scared of like how, not like scared, but like, intimidated by his son's like dedication or obsession. It's almost like
I didn't get
scary.
That what I got from it was this feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I never understood the passion and talent and hard work that goes, because he can see him like his blood, sweat, and tears that went into this with how hard he's playing his heart out there. And the fact that he just got humiliated. And then he's like, the dad's like, let's go. And he takes he takes the nerve to like put himself together and go back out there. And then he's playing his heart and like blood, sweat, and tears out there. To me, it looked like a realization to himself, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I haven't seen this the entire time. So that kind of look of like shock and oh my goodness, I thought the way I perceived it was like at himself,
right?
Almost in like this kind of like awe of like what his son is doing in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really see it. I just pulled up the YouTube clip of the last like 9 minutes of the movie, and I'm just like staring at this guy's face, and it's just such a weird expression he seems to have. I almost want to send it to you right quick, because
I just watched it. Like,
yeah, no, it's just I don't know. It's just so strange. His like Starias on there. It's not your traditional like admiration that he's looking at.
It's not admiration as in like, oh, I'm happy and smiling. It was like an awe of like, I think he felt bad that he didn't realize what his son was really trying to do and say to him. Because even when he was talking to him in the kitchen when he came home, he was like, yeah, things are going well and all this stuff. And his dad was like, you really care about his opinion of you, don't you? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I feel like the dad just didn't really get it. Like he tried to be supportive of his kid, but he didn't get it until that moment. That's what I got from it.
That makes sense. I get that.
But I just think also Fletcher is obviously, like we said, crazy because he kept saying the thing where Charlie Parker didn't become a great until someone threw a symbol at his head. And he almost took that literally by throwing a chair at his head. And like he idolizes becoming this, what's the word I'm looking for? This mentor, I guess, where he'll do anything that he can while like trying to find one of the greats. But in saying that, one of the greats, if you're one of the greats, you wouldn't be discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just try to make a great out of everybody and you believe that you won't be discouraged, then you have to realize what you're doing is breaking people down and hurting people mentally, like very bad. Like you're hurting people to try to find one of the greats when everybody might not be that. Like it might not be that might not be either their number one passion or they want to do it in the way that you do. So it's like, it can be very harmful.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I had a question I wanted to ask you about this movie. Right. Why is it called Whiplash and not Caravan?
That's actually a good question because Caravan is the end where he basically breaks through. And I feel like that's a more pivotal point in the movie. Right, because he breaks through and he's like, "I don't care."
Caravan's in twice, right? He struggles to play Caravan after he gets in the car accident, and then Caravan is the final climactic piece he plays that kind of like instills that he kind of did it. Whiplash is the one that he can play from memory, and that's what kind of like gets him up into being the core drummer for the band, opposed to the alternate.
Well, it was also the first song when he was in the studio band that they played. They played when when they got in there, that was the first song they played was Whiplash.
Yeah, and that's when he's like when he's doing this tempo struggle.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think
Whiplash has the better name than Caravan for a movie, and it has like the kind of double entendre, like you're getting hit with like his kind of personality is kind of almost like Whiplash. He's like, especially in that scene, he's good with you, and then all of a sudden he's throwing a chair at you and yelling at you. It's kind of that weird, you know what I mean?
Right. So I do like the idea that we're brainstorming and trying to figure out why, but I did also look it up because I'm curious to see if there was any reason. And this first thing that came up said, like any good movie title, Whiplash has multiple meanings. And the name performed by Hank Levy, whatever, in the film, obviously it's a song.
Right.
But also the condition a character suffers at one point due to a car crash, and a good description for the mental state endured by the students of abuse from Terrence Fletcher.
Okay. Yeah. So that's basically what I just said.
Yeah. So, I mean, regardless if that's what was intended, yeah, it does make sense. And it's a nice kind of dual meaning. But yeah, I do want to talk about the end of the movie a little bit because that's obviously the most climactic part. Basically, right. Fletcher was like, he got him to play in his new band, his JVC, because he got fired from the school because Neiman ratted him out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because his abusive teaching ways. And then Fletcher was like, I'm not an idiot. I know it was you. Gave him the wrong sheet music, so he humiliated him. But doesn't
that seem a little crazy? Because when they would have had to have had a all-together band rehearsal. And how did they do that without him ever realizing that they were playing different music?
Well, he did say all he told them was like, I'm using the same playlist from Schaefer. So it's all the songs, and he told them the songs they were going to play.
Right. It's okay for him to, but the rest of the band would probably have needed, since especially with a song that they or in that kind of situation, they needed it would have been weird for them to have practiced with never having a drummer unless they had another guy there And then they got rid of
They
him
did.
and brought in
They
the
said
other
that, yeah, they replaced. He said, my drummer's just not cutting it. It was basically an excuse where the guy probably was fine. And then Fletcher gave him the excuse of, you're not cutting it. We need a better drummer. Because that's what he said when he met up with him at the bar. He was like, yeah, my drummer right now is just not cutting it. I need somebody that knows these songs back, like, you know, like the back of their hand kind of thing.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say here. Okay. So I think it's funny. I just thought it was funny where in the school in Schaefer, when he was obviously instructing his band, every time he addressed his band, it was basically very demeaning and very harsh and critical. And then he went to JVC and he was like, okay, so for the first, I think, performance that we see when they're doing the Schaefer studio band, you see that Fletcher is talking to a friend of his and his daughter, and he's like super nice. And he's like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I haven't seen you in so long. You were so little. And then he switches or he like by a flip of a switch walks into the door to the band. He's like, all right, what's up, you stupid people, or whatever he says.
I don't think he calls them stupid people.
What does he say, dude?
I don't remember, but I'm just saying, I don't think he comes in and goes, hey, what's up, stupid people?
Yeah, little disclaimer here. This movie I really like this movie. The acting's great. The cinematography is great. I think the end does better, which I'm about to get into. Sure. It is the best job of any movie that I have seen that does this like rising from the ashes type of thing, at least on my opinion, for my emotional like state when I watch this. Every time the end always gets me like hardcore.
Say rise from the ashes, as in like it seemed like he was gone and then he comes back in the last
film. Kind of this comeback story of this kid who was just torn apart and then, you know, comes back. But what I'm saying is when they go to the JVC and the band comes like, all right, guys, how are we doing? Let's go out there. And, you know, these people are very important. So you want to do your best. You could become, you know, the starter at Lincoln Center, but you don't make a mistake or, you know, they'll remember it. But so go out there and have fun. I'm like, yo, completely. He knows he can't get away with treating these people.
He's been neutered
because they're adults. Like they'll fight him back. Like, yeah. It's just crazy because that really drives home like the abuse, because I feel like when we're in school, and obviously not to this extent, but like I remember days when I was back in elementary school or middle school where I would have teachers that are just mean, and I feel like there are teachers that think they can get away with things of just not being super nice to their kids and being very harsh on them. Like again, not to this extent, but because they're younger. And those teaching styles just leave obviously the kids thinking, oh, well, this teacher was just a mean teacher. And
well, it's also weird because like kids, and I mean, I don't know if somebody like in Teller's character in this movie really applies, because this is kind of like the collegiate level. I mean, he still would have only been like 18 or 19, but when you're in like actual, you know, grade school, it's very strange. You know, you adults can get away with, or teachers or whatever can get away with a lot more talking to kids and kind of, you know, saying whatever they want than like I feel like they could to me now. You know what I mean? Like as an adult, like say your boss, like if someone ever was just like said some crazy stuff to me, I'd be like, okay, bye. I just leave, right? Like, but again, you're a kid and you're in school, if someone's like demeaning or whatever, and I mean, you know, sometimes kids deserve it because kids are bad, but it's just, you know, it feels like it's so much more emotional and it's part of your life and so devastating. I was like, I got yelled at, and then, but now it's just like, okay, fuck you, I'm done. That's it.
Yeah,
so it's very different that way.
And another main overarching thing that I do like about this is I took a culinary like college class, and if you have taken any sort of, I guess it depends on where you go, but the culinary field is meant to, or it's portrayed as being kind of harsh, especially when you see people like Gordon Ramsay who are like yelling at people. Like obviously he's over the top, but it is a very intense environment and you're moving very quick and the food has to be right and chefs can be very strict on things. And I did go through that, like, but not in a, you know, abusive way like this movie or anything. But I do enjoy watching where you're very passionate about something and things are very, very tense. And this movie just brought out like the emotions you feel in those kind of moments and the drive and passion you have to have for something you really love and you continue to push it. And like to push for it. And this movie being about really achieving and trying to chase your dreams, which I'm very passionate about. And I feel like everybody, if you like this movie, that's probably why, is because everybody has that deep down inside, whether they act on it or not, where they have certain passions or they like, you know, a certain thing and they work really hard for something, and whether it works out or not, watching somebody else go through that, and it you can relate to it in some way. But this, I think, just did a very good job at showing that intensity.
Right.
And yeah, so moving on to the end, though, especially with the intense moments where, I mean, I guess throughout the entire movie, but especially at the end where Miles Teller's character, Andrew Neiman, goes back on stage after being humiliated and just starts playing. He's like, oh, Fletcher goes, all right, now we're going to slow it down a little bit. And he just starts playing and just doesn't stop playing. And this lasts for like 15 minutes. And I wrote down, this scene just keeps on going, but it doesn't get old. I feel like it should, but it doesn't. The longer it goes, the better it gets. And that is such a good testament, I think, to how well these people are acting, and the cinematography of how they're cutting back and forth between the shots and the intensity of the moment, to where he's really showing up Fletcher, and Fletcher walks over to him and he's like, what are you doing? And he just slams a cymbal in his face. And I'm like, this is so good.
I'll gut you like a fucking fish.
It's so good. And the way that I described this scene, but I also described a lot of the other intense scenes, but it's very, very clear to me in this one, is it seems like a fight, like a stage, like a fight that you would see in a movie between, you know, like superheroes or whatever. A very intense kind of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, not just fight, but a physical, almost altercation, stage fight kind of thing. But it's done purely through emotions and characters. Like, that's how I felt.
Yeah,
like there wasn't any swinging. I mean, besides, you know, slamming a cymbal in his face and all that kind of stuff, the kind of jabs they had back and forth at each other felt like I was watching an intense fight, but it was through pure emotions and characters. And that's what I love about movies, when it makes you feel stuff. And having these fights and stuff on screen, when it's like superhero movies or spy movies or whatever, you have a physical fight. I like that too, and it adds to it. But if you don't have any character development behind it, it doesn't really mean much to see people swinging around their fists and swords and weapons or whatever for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
So this did the complete opposite. You had all that and you didn't need the rest, and it just drew me in so much.
He did. I watched. I don't know if you also watched it. A video that kind of interviewed the director and Teller and J.K. Simmons, and the director Damien Chazelle. He basically did go into detail that he wanted this movie to feel and look like almost kind of like a boxing movie, and kind of have that.
I didn't even see this, and that's what I got. I love it. He did, dude. Yeah, they just so good with this movie.
Basically, did exactly what you.
That's so good.
Felt like, yeah. So.
Like the fact, okay, it got more and more intense. It didn't stop. The lights went off. This man's playing in the dark. I'm just like smiling from ear to ear. And he just, bro, it's so good.
I especially love the two final shots of this movie, which are, at first you see a very strangely positioned shot on J.K. Simmons' face, where you basically just see his eyes and his brow, but you can still see him smile just because of the change how his face distorts. And then it cuts back to Teller, and he basically does the same thing, and then it's just over. Yeah, definitely love that. It does. I've always wondered what this movie was like. If you really want to go into detail, is it just as simple? Not to say it's simple, but is it just that was this part of J.K. Simmons' plan all along? You think was it the final push, the final thing that made him angry enough to do it, or was it actually just how it just turned out, and that was really just Teller? I've always kind of wondered that.
Yeah, and I like that you wonder that, because it's kind of really hard to know. And I like when movies leave you with questions. I like piecing together parts of movies to a degree, and this added that little bit of it without making it too complicated with trying to piece everything together. So I don't know. I also don't know. If I had to guess, I would say, I don't know, because originally I would say yes, it was his final push. But after watching the amount of times I had, his reaction seems pretty clear when he's like his reaction is pretty genuine when he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like he seems angry, and he seemed like he really just wanted to get back to this guy. That's what I took it as.
But at the same time,
halfway through, he's like, this is his final push, and then he just pushed him more. So I think halfway through, he's like, it worked, but it wasn't his sole intention.
Right. It just seems insane because a guy like him, he could have just stopped it all there. He could have, like he's clearly shown that he's not going to like back down just because of any kind of like weird social pressure or anything like that. Like he could have just ripped the whole drum set away from him and stopped, if he was really angry enough. And it doesn't take a lot to set this guy off. So this is definitely the biggest kind of middle finger that Teller's ever given him. So it does seem odd that he would just let him do it without having the original thought or plan in his head, to me. But yeah, I just I think that's most of what I have to say. I like that this, again, to me, this, I guess maybe it's not rise from the ashes, but comeback kind of story of this character who's been beaten down pretty much throughout the whole movie. I mean, yeah, it was to try to build him up, but he really got beaten down throughout this whole movie and then came back, and just that kind of comeback story. Right. To me, fight me on it. Fight me. Is the best movie I've seen that does it. Like, as far as emotions go. Like, the movie ended, and I did that thing where you just, what I do, maybe I'm a psycho, where I just like, I put both of my hands up and just kind of shake them like this would like I know you guys can't see what I'm doing, but almost like the that's a good pizza. Do you know what I'm talking about? What are you talking about?
You know when you just like shake your hands like, this was so good. I do that. Am I a psycho? We just take your hand.
Yeah. At first, you said put your hands together, so I was like shaking a weird, like volleyball fist above your head. That's what I thought you were talking about. I was like, sorry, I've never done that.
Where you put your hands up and you're like, a masterpiece. You know what I'm talking about?
I think, yeah.
Like, I did that and just went like, it was so good. Like,
I don't think I do that in a room by myself after watching a movie.
Oh, I did. I 100% did. I 100% did. And as you guys know, I'm an emotional guy, and this is just an emotion-heavy movie. Mm-hmm. So to wrap up this movie, because we talked about it for quite a minute, we got to get to the other movie, but it's able to. It's, I guess, a disclaimer on it. If you guys don't like intense movies, like very intense movies, you probably won't like it. And because it's very intense, there's a lot of cussing and all that kind of stuff. But the acting in this movie is some of the best that I've seen, just from a standpoint of where you have two main characters where the whole story kind of just revolves around these guys and you see them for most of the movie. And it's this very good, like, dream-driven movie where this guy, it just does get that comeback action in a way I've never seen portrayed before, in a way, like I was saying to you, which you confirmed, seems like this battle, but through pure characters and emotion.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so well done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll agree. I also really, really enjoy this movie. It's fantastic. I think you already knew that. One last thing I want to say.
Thank you, Nate.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
You're the one that showed me this movie. No, wait, are you? I think you might have said, like, I think you mentioned this movie before I actually saw that it was an Oscar nominee. I think you might have mentioned it.
2014 was kind of the year in which I started really like getting into watching a lot more of like outside.
You showed me this movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Because 2014 was also the year that like Birdman and stuff like him, which obviously won, and
hot take, Birdman,
there were a couple other ones,
because Birdman won against this movie for Best Picture.
I haven't actually seen Birdman in forever, but
I think you said Birdman.
But yeah, I'm still a big fanboy of Birdman, man. It's so well done. There's
no competition for me, and I've only seen Birdman once, so to be fair, I'd have to watch it again. But this movie, in my opinion, should have won over it.
I just think Birdman has a lot of the same emotions that this movie has, but it also has, like, the single take aspect, kind of like the 1917 thing, and then as well as just some crazy, like that crazy ending, and just man, Birdman's a ride. I gotta go back and watch it again.
I'll have to watch it again and see. But I think that Birdman, to me, it didn't hit the same, which is interesting because it's about an actor
Yeah, and it's funny because I think I have a little bit more of the music background. You have way more of the acting, like theatrical background. But we like the opposite side movies, or both the Oscar contenders. I do find that funny.
Yeah. Did you say you had one more thing about Whiplash before we break?
Yes, but it's not really about the movie. It's about so when I was looking at videos for this, and I was just like when I watched that video with the interview, the next one autoplayed that was in the list, and it was this guy who was doing like a reviewing Whiplash as a jazz musician kind of a thing, and it's 30 minutes long. And let me tell you, you're gonna hate this video.
He hates on it.
So he likes it as a movie, but he goes into like all these like, man, if you think I'm nitpicky, oh my god, he goes up in all these like ridiculously dumb and ways of how this movie is bad as far as presenting jazz music. And it's just, but most of his, I've only watched like half of it. It's like 30 minutes long. Most of his arguments so far seem to be like, in the movie he says like, let's like, he'll say some like jazz music nomenclature, like, well, we're gonna take it from the top. But really, if you're in the scene, the guy will say it more like this. And I'm like, so you've been around every single jazz musician and jazz musician conductor, and how they all say one thing. It's like it pissed me off.
Then it'd probably make me very upset.
Yeah. It's the guy's name is Adam Neely. Go comment bad things.
Don't do that. What are you doing? This is not a place. No.
No,
we don't condone that.
But I thought that was funny.
I like how at the beginning of this, you're like, yeah, it's kind of interesting because when we talk about documentaries, it's hard to take us, really, really say what we want because it's real people and we don't want to affect people like that. And you're like, oh yeah, just go say bad stuff about it.
Hey, if a guy has a bad take, I'm gonna call him out on it. I've always said that from the beginning, and I think this is a bad take, so I'm calling him out on it. I've only seen half of it, full disclosure, so that I'm probably not qualified to say that yet. But
you're not.
Yeah.
You're never qualified to say go leave bad reviews.
Million views. Oh, come on. There are people you comfortably say, hey, review bomb this guy because he's doing something bad.
All right. Whiplash is a good film.
Yep,
brother.
If you haven't been convinced to go watch it yet, you probably won't be.
Did we watch another movie or was that it?
Yeah, we watched another movie.
I didn't watch it, dude.
Yes, you did.
I didn't. Oh, the spider movie.
Yeah, that one.
Oh.
Enemy. Well, first,
go ahead and recap it for us. I recapped Whiplash.
Okay. Like I said, if you haven't seen this movie, I certainly suggest go seeing it. It's on Netflix right now. Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a weird movie. Basically, this movie is about Jake Gyllenhaal plays a guy named Adam, who is a college level history professor, and he is a bit of an odd bird, bit of a recluse, kind of has a weird relationship with a supposed to be girlfriend, you could say, but all one day he finds, while watching a movie, he finds a guy who looks exactly like him, a doppelganger, and this kind of drives him a little nuts, and he looks into this guy's life, and they basically eventually intertwine, and it just kind of goes off the rails from there. So that's the basic premise. It's a little hard to explain what this movie is about, but yeah, that's pretty much. I guess that's all you can say without really going into super detail about it. I am very curious about what you thought of this movie.
Okay, so my movie I picked, which means I liked it. So then you go, the first thing is, all right, what did you think? And then we go into it.
Yeah.
You liked it, and you've already said that, so it wasn't much of a conversation of whether you liked it or not.
Right.
I had not seen this movie before you told me to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I wish I hadn't.
What?
And I wish I hadn't.
You hadn't seen Whiplash?
No. I was finishing your sentence, basically saying I hadn't seen this movie before.
I wish I hadn't. Oh, no. But I will say, because like we like to say, without sugarcoating, we're just going to say whether we like it or not at the upfront.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, dude, not for me, bro.
I knew it. This is Lighthouse all over again.
All right, so weirdly enough, I was like, I'm going to compare this to Lighthouse because I think it'll be interesting to compare it to Lighthouse because it's an A24 movie that's a weird movie for a good purpose of it is weird to be weird, in my opinion. We will go in more into depth, but the reason I want to compare it to Lighthouse really quick is because I understand. If I were to rewatch a movie, it would be this one over Lighthouse.
Okay.
But I understand the premise as to why they would make a movie, I think, more about Lighthouse than about this one.
What did you kind of get out of this? Do you feel like you know what it's about, or did it feel just like nonsense?
Okay, so obviously there has to be some kind of purpose to a movie for making a movie. Now, when you're making a movie, you can try to make it as convoluted as possible. There's still a vision from the director. But when you're trying to make a movie, you can make it as convoluted as possible to make it seem more and more on that scale. You can push it all the way to being very convoluted, and that scale necessarily doesn't have an end. But making it super kind of confusing, convoluted, and being able to piece stuff together to the point where a normal person might say, I'm just watching nonsense. This doesn't make sense. Now, this movie is very close to that point. For a lot of people, it is at that point. But I am obviously, we look at movies in a lot more depth than just that. So this depends. Now, we will break this apart, but how you break this apart depends on what you think it's about. Because you can break it apart differently depending on what you actually think is going on. So after I did some very minimal research, there is the idea that they're the same person, or at least at one point were the same person, or that it's almost a figment of his imagination, the second guy, the actor.
Right.
If that's the case, there's a lot of stuff you can't break apart the same way.
What do you mean?
So, for example, let's say they're two different people.
Okay.
Or clones. Let's say he's a physical being. Let's say they are two different physical beings, regardless of whether he was cloned from him or they're at one time the same person, they're from the same being. That's fine. But for this, what I'm about to say is they are now two separate physical beings. Let's say that.
Okay.
You don't like one thing that you don't like is crazy coincidences. And boy, if that's the case, there's a lot of crazy coincidences, which then makes you think that because it's a crazy movie, maybe they are kind of the same person, but then all that gets thrown out the window. So it's very interesting to talk about.
I'm confused.
So the first one.
Adam is the like self-conscious, like neurotic one. Yeah.
Right. No, the first coincidence is this man. And what are their names again? Because I don't remember.
Adam is the kind of protagonist, the nervous, neurotic one, and then Anthony is the outlandish, cocky kind of asshole, I guess. Best way to put it.
And what was the other dude? I already forgot.
Adam and Anthony.
Adam, Anthony. Okay, so Adam, the first dude, is not a movie guy. He doesn't watch movies.
Yep.
The one movie that he gets recommended to him is a movie that his doppelganger is in. He looks at his IMDb page, or technically, I don't think it's IMDb at this point. It's like his resume on the management website.
Right.
He's in like 3 movies. Maybe. He's a small time actor.
Yeah.
And in the movie we saw, and then the other movie that he looked up where he was being like pinned to the ground and stuff, he seemed like he's a very almost background extra character, or featured extra, or very small side character. Okay? Right. So he's not in a lot, and he's in very, very minimal, if not background-ish roles. And he's in, like, we're talking millions of movies that exist. Okay. Billions. Who knows how many movies?
I don't think there's billions of movies, but yeah,
you don't think so? You don't think there's billions of movies? Okay, millions. That's still fine. And he's in, we'll say 3 of them. I'll even give you 5, but it looked like about 3 movies. The guy recommends a movie to him, and it happens to be the one that he's in.
Yep.
Giant coincidence right there. And it just struck me as odd, because I was like, that's a premise of the entire movie. And you don't usually like that. But again, now I want to see, what do you think actually, there's a lot more I want to go into detail about. A lot of what I have written down in my notes can be viewed very differently. Depending on what you think. So what do you, I want to hear your opinion on this movie.
This movie really does break down and doesn't really make a lot of sense for examples like you brought up, and also character motivations. Like, why would he even be upset that he found a guy, or so obsessed with that he found a guy that looks just like him? It happens. Like, people have doppelgangers. Albeit that's a very close one. Usually they're not that crazy, but it still wouldn't cause him to be so enthralled in this guy's life. The only way this movie does make sense is that if you do,
that's a big issue I had, which is why I want to see how you view it, because
exactly, which I like I said, that is there, but that only exists if they are two different people, which they're not. They're one person.
Okay, why? Well, I guess that's breaking it down very.
So this movie is about. I have also looked online about what people, how they interpret it and see how this it goes about. And I disagree with quite a big portion. I feel like people kind of go to crazy lengths. Like I read some stuff about like the guy's name is Adam, and so like Adam and Eve, Adam, and then that's why they have the rib scar. And it's like, okay, hold on, I think you're going too far and all that bullshit. But I do think that this is about one guy who is having an affair with, obviously the other woman, and he's basically kind of breaking down mentally, and he's kind of finding this out for himself. He's kind of developed two personalities, and they're colliding on a metaphorical level more than a literal level. So it's being shown to us as being as a physical blend, but really what it is, he's just made two different. It's almost like schizophrenia, right? He almost has two completely different personalities that are clashing with each other inside his own mind. And there's evidence of this, in like when his mother says, when it brings up his little piddling acting career, the kind of implying that they're the same person, because there's no reason that he would be able to know of that other dude's acting career, because it's so small and insignificant, right? So little things like that kind of tie them together. So that's kind of why none of these other issues that you see in the movie actually hurt it, because it doesn't actually matter. It's a very strange thing, and I know that we've talked about it when we talked about Lighthouse, how when you start going into the path of like talking about kind of mental illness and basically going crazy, quote unquote, you can kind of get away with stuff in movies, and that could be considered a cop out. And if you want to look at it that way, I'll give that to you. You might be able to consider it a cop out, but
not necessarily with this, because it's always interesting, and I've seen similar movies where there's kind of like a split personality where you have like two people but they're the same, and it's a little more clear, because this one is a little not quite as clear.
Oh yeah, this one's definitely, it's not trying to present anything to you easily,
right? So it's not that quite excuse, because a big thing what I meant when I was saying Lighthouse is this guy's going insane, so all the shots you're seeing are just don't make sense, or you don't know if they're trying to make sense or not. This at least gives you an idea of why it wouldn't make sense or why it could make sense. Whereas the other, for me, Lighthouse didn't have enough of that to where it's just like, well, he's crazy. So it's like, well, at least this one can go, well, he's creating multiple personalities, and this is what he's envisioning. Then you can get on board with it. The issue I had with Lighthouse is I couldn't get on board with any of it. So I will give it that for this movie, which is maybe why I was saying that I could watch this movie again, because I could get more on board with this than the other one. If I watch Lighthouse again, I'm sure I could try to decipher more, but I just don't care. Like, I don't care to decipher more of that movie. It just was so much thrown at me and crap that I just don't care about, to be honest. Well,
we do have different tastes, and I think that's good. It's not super fun to just agree on everything. And you especially know, but people who listen also probably know from previous episodes, I like it when a movie is presenting you with and is making you ask the question, what the fuck is going on? I'm fully in it. I want to know what the fuck is going on. So that's kind of like my favorite, or one of my favorite kind of feelings you can get while watching something. And especially, but it doesn't work if you can't come to conclusion. If you can't come to any kind of conclusion by the end that makes sense, then it does fall apart. And it's basically for nothing. You can't, it turns more into a gimmick.
Which is interesting why you say you like Lighthouse, because you even admitted there were some parts of that
and there are some parts to this that I can't fully explain, that I don't think fully work. Maybe there are things I've missed, because I haven't combed over it with a super tried to break down everything. But I'm just saying on a large scale, I think both of these movies still work. But
so you're inclined to believe that as long as on a large scale the movie works, like this movie, that you're probably inclined to believe that most of the other stuff probably does work if you just look into it far enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, but there probably is some inconsistencies. There probably are some small things that don't quite make sense or are unexplained and probably can't be explained, but they are there for plot reasons. You know what I mean?
Right. But that gives me one of the overarching feelings and responses I had to this movie that I want to read to you, which you kind of said, if it doesn't make sense, it just seems like a gimmick. Made me think of what I said or what I wrote down here, which is putting together a movie, like piecing it together can be fun, but it has to have like characters, obviously, like emotion and all that, like a lot of other elements to make it work, right? Because if you just make a movie with the sole intent, I don't like when movies are made for the sole intention of having to just put it together and putting other things on off to the side.
Well, I don't think you can say that that's all that this movie has to offer.
Well, not necessarily this movie. I'm just saying in general.
Sure.
But if it's completely about putting it together and every twist and turn is about I can't believe this and that leads to this and this and just leads to more confusion, it just becomes a chore to put it together. When that's the entire purpose of it. So for example of this was, obviously if they're the same person, they both have that scar on them.
Right.
And they played this dramatic music where he was like, I have a scar here. Do you have a scar on your chest? And he just kind of didn't respond. He's like, you do, don't you? And he's like, this is a bad idea, and leaves. And about 5-10 minutes later, it's showing him in the bathroom and he looks and you see the scar on his chest.
Sure.
We all knew it was there. But they play this dramatic music like, oh, he's got the scar. I was like, I don't care. Like, I know he has it. I get it.
Okay, so that's not exactly what I believe that is supposed to be happening on here. The reason is because it does seem a little jarring when you first kind of watch it and you see that scene and you're like, why is it going? This was all he seemed to have wanted for the first half of the movie. Why is this one acknowledgement such a big deal? But if you go back to the idea that these two personalities that are so different are clashing, then you're it's almost like Adam is by viewing that scar having to really face the idea that this other guy is him and that they're one and the same, and that all of his actions and all the things that he's done that he doesn't like and all the aspects of his personality that he's not comfortable with are him. And so that's what makes it scary for him in the moment. That's what makes it tense. It's not about the fact that they just have the same scar. You see what I'm saying?
I do, but I don't know. That specific part. So it is interesting because in the scene where his wife comes to meet the quote unquote. Okay, let me restart here.
Sure.
Anthony, who's married to the pregnant girl, the pregnant lady goes to see Adam.
Right.
And then when Adam goes inside, or she calls him, and he picks up right as he walks in the door.
Yep.
Like giving you that, like, well, we didn't see that he picked up and that they were talking, because they're never shown on screen together when anyone else is around.
Right.
So you have a lot of stuff like that leads you to think. So, okay, then if that's the case, I want to break some of this down then, because if they're the same person, so I'm trying to think of the people that interact with them. So specifically, Adam's girlfriend and then Anthony's wife. What's going on there?
So I feel like that the timeline is a bit out of whack. It's not exactly how we're being portrayed as well, because I
don't like that, but okay.
So you probably remember that the wife, when they first get the call from Adam, the wife is asking who called back, and Anthony's like, it was the same guy or whatever, but he went and wrote down like a location and stuff like that. Obviously that was later thing, but she is wondering if it's the other woman. The other woman is the girlfriend, is Adam's girlfriend. So because that affair is happening at the same time, it's already been a running thing that our combined character Adam Anthony has a problem with women as far as being loyal to one. He's a cheater. and it's kind of what dominates life, and it's what the spiders are really kind of representing in the movie. They're really talking about it's his dangerous part of most, and to his own self, really part of his personality. It's his weird inability to kind of just be with one woman and be satisfied with that kind of relationship. That's why
what does that have to do with a spider?
That's what the representation there is. That's what the spiders represent. Right. Okay. He's scared of monotony. That's why you see that's why you see the woman in the beginning. That's why she's squishing the spiders, because he's fully detaching himself. That Anthony is from that side of him. It's basically like pushing that away. It's almost a release that he's able to destroy the idea of like monotony. And that's why you see the woman walk through with a spider head. And but later, as we go on through the movie, the large spider over the cityscape is kind of the overarching, like, looming threat of having to, be truly settled down. And then even on the car crash, the spider web, that's like the final web he was caught in. And then obviously when the wife turns into a spider at the end, it's like he's finally facing his fear and he's okay with it. That's why he's kind of got that face. He's not scared of the spider at the end of the movie. He's just content with it. He's like, okay, that's his reaction to it.
But why is she a spider at the end of the movie then?
Because he's finally having to face it. It's like the last little bastion of Anthony saying like, hey, we can't do this. This is what we fear most. But it's not. He's fine with it, because he's fully turned into not fully Adam, but some kind of hybrid of Adam and Anthony, but with the better parts of both, to be, in a way.
Right, but I'm just trying to figure out why it was a spider in the room. If he's not afraid anymore, it shouldn't be a spider.
Well, no, it's shown like, and it's because that's what the spider has been the symbol of his fear through other women. And so when he sees the spider, he should be afraid of it. But when the last shot is of his face and he's not, and that's the importance.
And I mean, in that one, the spider was like cowering in the corner, even though it was like huge.
Yeah.
But there shouldn't even be the other woman present if he's, I mean, I get the idea of that's the symbolism of the last thing, but I mean, I can get on board with it. I get it. It doesn't make 100% sense, but I get it.
Yeah, I think you can. If you go through, you can probably poke holes. Some of the things I still wonder about is like, did him like with the car crash, like how much of that is real? Did she really die? Was that just like a metaphorical killing off of that side of his body? I don't know. I can't really answer that question. That does hurt this. Like, if this was foolproof, I'd probably love this movie. Like, without a doubt, it would be my favorite. But there are these issues I have. Like in the beginning of the movie, how much of that is real? Is that a real place that him and that other guy go, or and all those other men actually go to and are all into that? Like, it has some questions there that I can't quite figure out. And honestly, I haven't even really seen much consensus when looking into other people's opinions of it as well. So I, like I said, not perfect. It does have those holes that you can poke in it for sure. But
the other holes you can poke in it too is like, so if this guy is kind of has some sort of mental issues, which I think he does.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Because he's kind of like,
I can't diagnose him, but
well, no, but I mean, he does seem kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? But kind of on edge and all this other stuff. And
yeah, he's obsessive.
Like not, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But then if you're saying they're the same people, the other guy's not like that. So is this the view of what he believes both sides of him is, and his true self is probably somewhere in between that?
Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty accurate as far as it's more of these two independent personalities kind of just colliding, and I think by the end that they do kind of reach some kind of consensus. Adam kind of wins by the end of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it called enemy? Is it saying you're your own worst enemy?
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's kind of where they're going with it. Because I mean, that's kind of what happens, is that he gets obsessive about this guy, finds him out, seeks him out, and then it obviously goes in kind of a bad direction that he doesn't really want it to go.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I mean, it helps. It does help me like it more to like really try to break it apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get the idea that maybe they were the same. And really, I probably would have a very different opinion of this watching it again. If going, okay, now let's watch this movie going, they're the same people, and try to piece this together. And I'd probably like it a lot more.
Yeah.
Honestly, even just after this conversation, I'm already liking it more, which is good. But I'm trying to remember why exactly I felt like that didn't 100% work, and maybe that's because, like you said, there were specific parts in the movie that maybe I can't think of now. Maybe I have them written down here, but that just didn't seem to lead into the thought of them being the same person. Like there are certain specific parts. I mean, well, if that happened, they're probably different people.
Okay.
But again, if that, I think it makes the most sense that they're the same person, because if they're different, then a lot of this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, for sure. If there's different people, this really starts to fall apart. And it starts entering into like Snowpiercer territory as far as like the inconsistencies just destroyed the cool concept you started with. And there's still a little bit of that there, even when they're the same person. Just because what they have to, the way they go about presenting it. It's really hard to, there's no, I do wish it's funny because there's no clear indicator of what's real and what's not, but if there was a clear indicator of what's real and what's not, then there wouldn't be, this really wouldn't be a mystery that you have to put together. It would just be presented to you and you would just know by the end for sure, and that would be it. And I feel like that takes away some of the fun of it, but at the same time it also makes it incredibly hard to critique the logic of the movie if you don't know. It's, you can't point to, okay, that's real, that's not real, therefore you can't view it the same way. Because if a scene, if it's a dreamlike scene, right? I mean, then you can't be upset at the movie for showing me a woman walk down with a spider head, because that's a dream. That can happen in a dream, but it can't happen in real life. So you see what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I very much thought that those obviously were
those were obviously dreams, but the not real scenes of this movie go beyond the obvious dream sequences.
Yeah, and so I'm also, as we speak, looking at a couple different things.
Sure.
There's and this could be completely wrong, because obviously this is somebody trying to explain.
It's somebody's take. Yeah.
So it says Mary, however, Anthony is not sleeping around with Mary. The Mary we see throughout the enemy movie is only a part of his subconsciousness. Mary represents the temptations and carnal relationship that Anthony is having with other women behind his wife's back. This is the reason why we are never really given an insight to who Mary is.
Mary is the girlfriend, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They don't really ever say her name. That could be true. I think that because I do remember there being a scene where she's wearing the same high heels as the woman who crushes the tarantula in the beginning.
And is that why he went?
And I also thought it was very strange that she's always wearing the exact same like little black, quote unquote, little black dress, right?
Right.
So it is kind of interesting. I think that the idea overall that he has a problem with women is still there, but it's not necessarily that she exists entirely. But I'm not sure if I'm 100%. Well, that does explain the car crash bit. I don't know. It's tough because, if she's not real, then just how he kills off Anthony, he can also kill off her and be more of a stable individual. At least for the time being. There's also this running kind of motif that everything is repeating itself. He's talking about it a lot in his when he's doing his college lectures, and so you could take the end of this movie to have already happened, and that it always ends up leading into the same place. He always ends up going back into the same person he was at the beginning of this movie.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So I don't know. It's just hard because if you say that Mary's not real, then that leads to imply the fact that Adam is not real, because the scenes that you see them together, then those are almost fake sequences or subconscious sequences.
Well, it's not so black and white as that. It's not just like this character is completely real or completely not real. I think that there are fake and real aspects to them. Like I think that the real Adam/Anthony, whoever this total one guy is an actual college teacher who actually had a small acting career in the past. But his other apartment where he has this other relationship with this woman might not be real. That aspect might be fake. So it's just hard to it's hard to tell, and I do think that those aspects do kind of hurt a little bit, but at the same time, it also makes it a little fun because that's your theory crafting of it is part of the, I feel like, part of the enjoyment for it.
So then let's bring up this scenario where I'm so bad with the names here. The wife.
Yeah.
She
Helen,
goes, Helen. She goes to see Adam at. Okay, well, first of all, I thought it was weird that she wouldn't just tell him what was wrong. Where she was like, saying that she saw him and all of that stuff. And I'm like, why is she just upset and crying? Like, just tell him. Like, everyone, like you were saying, like, if they're two separate people, they're freaking out over the fact that, like, if I saw someone that looked exactly like me, not even just doppelganger, but exactly like me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, other way around. Exactly like you, I would tell you, be like, yo, this is crazy. You got to meet up with this dude. I think you have my first thought is you got a long lost twin, something weird like that. So okay. But when she meets with him, she doesn't really say much, but he acts like she's like he doesn't know her. So she has to be real. She has to be a real character.
Yeah.
And
I do think she is.
Conversation with no one, because
I think what makes her upset is that she knows that she's talking to her husband, but he doesn't even recognize her because he's so lost in this other personality. He doesn't even know who she is.
So he legitimately, it's not even just a subconscious, he legitimately has split personality disorder then in this case.
Guess you'd have to classify it like that. Yeah.
You'd have to, because you can't say that like, oh, it's just a subconscious thing, because.
Well, I mean, it's still happening there.
What do you mean?
Right. Like, I mean, like this battle is still in the subconscious. It's not like actively something he's thinking about and playing out. It's
no,
happening.
I know. But I'm saying you can't just say that like that scene is a subconscious kind of not real, like almost dream sequence, because it's addressed later that she's like, I talked to him. He's you. You're talking to somebody else on the phone. You told me it's another person. It's you. And that's probably why she didn't want to discuss it, because she's like freaking out. So that makes more sense. It's just weird, because then at the end it's like, I want you to stay, almost like this
version of you. Yeah.
Which would make sense. So she just knows that she's,
I mean, he's unfolding it the whole time. And I mean, even when you see, there's also the picture in Anthony's apartment. That's the exact same picture with the exact same person from his box of pictures early in the movie from Adams.
Wait, what?
So you remember when he first finds Anthony in the movie, he's comparing an old picture of himself that he pulls out from a box of pictures to the screen. Especially, it was the screen where he's being like held down or whatever. And then at the end of the movie, he's looking around in Anthony's apartment while Helen is asleep, and he sees framed on a shelf that exact same picture.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the movie, I feel like in a subtle but pretty clear way, is really trying to support the idea that they are the same person, without a doubt.
Yeah. No, I definitely do think that's what's going on. And this is a split personality thing, because that's why she's probably freaking out, because she's like suspecting that he's really kind of lost it, and giving him that crazy look when they meet up, like, you really don't know who I am. And then she gets back home, and then he's there. And then he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, I think you do. And like, so it does make more sense. There are just parts of this movie that I think, to get a clear opinion, I'd have to watch it again to decide if this movie
with this new idea.
Yeah, and I don't know, and part of me just feels kind of stupid because part of me feels like I was trying to, I don't know. Okay, what I'm saying is I think that I need to rewatch this movie and decide if there's enough that does work with that mentality to then say, yes, I like this, it's good, it makes sense, or if it just becomes one of those movies that I think causes you to piece too much together, and even the stuff that you piece together is intentionally, like, if you can piece something together, I get that, but the things that you're piecing together have to make sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
because if you're piecing together
I triumph that. I've championed that idea all the time. You know, that.
Because if that thing that you're piecing together, once you piece it together, there's still a piece of that even if it fits, it doesn't clearly make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It loses it, and like I said, it starts to become more of a chore if it's just you have to piece everything together.
Well, I do think that's an opinion thing, because I never find that to be
that's what I'm saying. With this movie, might not be the case, but I would say there's other movies out there that making you
well, I'm just saying, I don't think I don't think I've ever experienced that personally, that like a movie has been so cryptic that I've found it laborious to try to piece together.
Right, and I think that just basically, I think that's opinion based. I think that there's a scale, and you can be wherever you want on that scale, and you could have the most convoluted, ridiculous movie, even if it doesn't fully make sense, you could like that, and it doesn't become a chore for you.
Right.
You watch a movie for the next 3 months, all you're doing is not watching any other movies, but trying to piece it together, even if it's intentional for part of it not to make sense. That's you. But I think there's a certain limit when you're talking to different people.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree that there's a range.
I do enjoy. There's even people that like don't like when like movies come out with sequels, and the sequels come out of order. Does that make sense? Where, like, for example, like the Fast and Furious, how like Han dies, and then like you figure he really didn't die till like 4 movies later, because then he's back. It was kind of cool to see how it pieces together, and you watch all these movies, and then later you're like, oh, that's where this goes, and that's why this, and then it all clicks. It's like, that's fun. I get.
I would just usually suggest against doing that, because it does make your stuff a lot more complicated. If I went back and watched the entire Fast and Furious franchise, and especially with Tokyo Drift in mind and everything that's in that, there's probably 1,000 little holes in that series now, because they chose to make Tokyo Drift happen like 7 or 4 movies in front of where it actually came out. Does that make sense?
There's some retconning in there as well, but I think my point is, what I'm saying is, I get piecing stuff together. I enjoy piecing stuff together. It just depends on, I guess, what that is, how much sense it's actually trying to make once you do piece these things together,
right?
And if that takes out some of the enjoyment or not, it depends on the person, depends on the movie, and depends on what you're trying to piece together. And I'm actually intrigued enough that I might watch this again.
Wow, I've twisted you around. You went from hating it to maybe you like it. Maybe.
Yeah. And and to be fair, I fault myself, because I feel like I did obviously give the intention of, or give the thought of, okay, maybe they're the same person, but I didn't entertain it enough to actually like go back through. And maybe it's because the movie was over. There was enough weird stuff in there with the spiders and everything, and the other dream sequences, that I was like, well, if those are dream sequences, maybe these are supposed to be real. So I was like, I don't really, you have to rewatch it. And I guess the other elements of the story didn't grab me enough to just by those elements go, okay, I like this enough with everything else to want to go back and make sure I piece it together properly.
Right.
But after talking about it, it makes more sense. There's a chance I'll go back and watch it, but it's not one of my favorites to where I would be like, even if what we're talking about does make sense, I wouldn't say that it's like top of my movie list because of that, but I will give it major props for this intuitive way of showing the split personalities and what somebody's going through in a very clever way. So I apologize for jumping the gun a little bit too soon there, guys, but that's why we discuss. That's why we talk. Okay.
No, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I'll say one thing. I'm sorry because I haven't seen this movie since about 2014. I didn't see it in theaters or anything, but I do remember watching it back then.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
And I had forgotten how graphic the beginning of this movie is. So I'm curious on how the first about 4 minutes were for you. If you were just like, what the fuck did he get me to watch?
Well, at first I was like, this isn't his favorite movie. He just wants me to watch something off the wall crazy.
Yeah.
But
and I'm not usually we talked about this before. I usually dislike anything that I feel like has gratuitous nudity because I feel like it's cheap for a movie to try to do. I think the movie, it's kind of playing with the line a little bit depending, but at the same time, no scene in this movie is quote unquote sexy. None of it's appealing or like arousing in any way, shape, or form. If you found that it was, you might want to do some self-reflection there.
Look, listen, if you were a little turned on by that scene where the
spider head lady
in the hall naked and then she had a spider head and you're like, yeah, I like that, then
stop listening to this podcast.
Yeah. But no, well, to be honest, I didn't know if it was gonna I thought that watching the beginning it was going to be a very different movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to last for longer. And I was like, please no, because that's not, I'm not into it. But I just covered up parts of the screen as you might call that childish, but I have no interest in seeing that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just made sure that I just either I just wasn't paying attention to that stuff.
I just in movies, it has to all serve a very succinct purpose when you're gonna. I feel like when you're gonna use it, if you're just throwing it out to throw it out there. That was a big thing I had. There was a Netflix miniseries called Love, Death, and Robots, and it was a pretty popular anthology series with a bunch of crazy sci-fi-ish scenarios. But there were a couple episodes that just had a lot of gratuitous nudity, and I was like, it pissed me off. I was like, what are we doing here? It's just distracting at this point.
Right.
But those scenes in this movie, I do feel like they were dark, but they were trying to send you a clear message on, or at least get you, into and curious about who this guy is. Because I mean, by the first 15 minutes, you think this mild-mannered college professor has an incredibly dark secret sex life.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I agree with you there that they served a purpose, but at the end of the day, for this is not to get too deep into personal views, but I don't care to look at any of that when to me, if you're looking at people in that way, there should be some sort of reason and behind. I don't
right, that's basically what I'm saying. But I would say that you're kind of maybe conflating or putting together two things. Art is very different from pornography, which a far cry from whatever's in this movie for sure. But so I wouldn't have any personal moral qualms about watching anything in this movie because it does serve a purpose. Now, if you were just watching
that's what I'm saying. Even as an audience member, yes, it served a purpose, but I still don't want to see it. But I get why it's there for people that are more cool with that. But personally, from my point of view, I'm still not trying to look at that.
You're just too nice.
That's all. That's all. But so I would say that if you can give your own kind of recommendations, but I think that if you are a person that likes to piece together, kind of movies that imply at things and almost give you this kind of mystery sort of thing to solve and delve into how people are portrayed in their mind in a physical way that's very intriguing and different.
I mean, if you haven't watched it before and you've listened to all of this, I don't know how fun it's going to be to watch now. If you've seen it before and you hated it, and now you've listened to us talk about it, maybe watch it again and see if you, with a different lens, and see if you like it a little bit more. But I can understand how this isn't everybody's favorite. I'm not going to tell people that they're wrong for not liking this one for sure, because it's definitely out there. But that's my thing, man. I just love weird shit.
And I can like some weird stuff as long as it serves a purpose. And there's a lot of things that once we talked and really broke things down, like there's a lot of purpose behind what was shown. So that's why I could see myself watching it again. And
I almost really made you watch Hereditary, and that would have been a
nope. But all right, lastly, I want to ask you, before you actually picked a movie, you said, I think I might pick this movie. And then obviously we took a couple of days to think about what movie we wanted to choose. And I pretty much immediately chose Whiplash. So that was kind of out of the running for you. And I know that is in your list.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to pick something else already.
Yep.
So that leads me to the question, which movie do you like? And I know that you don't like comparing them, but which movie do you like more?
Oh, man. You could probably, I think it'd be pretty easy actually to make the argument that Whiplash is probably just like, when you're comparing by all standard metrics of how we rate movies, the stronger, just traditional movie. Really great performances, clearly well written and acted and directed and everything like that. But when Enemy is just so my thing, and I just love watching, and it has enough of good acting. I mean, obviously, we're basically just talking about Gyllenhaal. Everyone else is fine, but they just don't have the same, we'll say, medium to really put forth their talent in this. Just like anybody outside of Teller and J.K. Simmons, they don't have enough space to really even say that they have done an amazing performance. You know what I mean? But I do think that I would probably watch. Well, that's a different question. Which one would you watch more versus which one you like?
If you had a friend, if you had a good friend that hadn't seen either movie, and you know that they are equally in to both of these types of movies, they like this, they like the emotional and driven kind of movie that Whiplash is, right? They like this intrigue of this movie. They like both, and you're like, and you guys are gonna watch. You're gonna sit down, you and your buddy, you're gonna watch a movie tonight. Which one would you be like, oh, we gotta watch this one first?
So. Well, I think it would definitely be fun to watch with both. I think Enemy wins out in that specific scenario because while it is fun to go like, oh man, that movie was awesome because of like blank, blank, blank. I think it's more fun to go, what the hell happened? That was trippy for X reason, blank, blank, blank. That kind of a thing. I think it's more fun from that perspective to watch the reaction of having seen something, kind of crazy like that. That's kind of why, something like Tiger King's exciting, because it's interesting to hear everyone's reactions to this nutty thing that everyone watched. So I guess,
the way I would view it is, which one did I enjoy more? That's really what I'm going on. And
I would say I would probably watch Whiplash more, like on repeat more than I would this movie, because I think after a couple times Enemy, you get it, and then it doesn't really have a whole lot to offer after that. While Whiplash, you can always enjoy those specific.
Bro, that's what I'm like. That's why I said like I almost forget how much I like it, because I watched it today and I was like, I get so moved by that movie. I enjoyed Whiplash more, but I would definitely give this one a watch if you haven't seen it. And it was good.
Well, cool. Yeah.
Well, that was an in-depth one today, boys.
Yeah, I'm glad we got back to that. It's been a little while since we had done something like that. I mean, really, I guess the last one we probably did like that was probably like Parasite or something. I mean, I know we did Onward, but that doesn't quite have the same meat. Don't
you dare say it doesn't have the same meat.
Oh, you're a big lover of Onward, huh? Favorite Disney?
I just really like. I really like Pixar, and I think that animation has its purpose and can be very meaningful as well.
We're not getting into that conversation. I like animation too.
Favorite animated movie? Go.
Oh, Sonic.
Mine's very close between The Incredibles and Into the Spider-Verse, but I think it's got a.
I think you're forgetting about G-Force, the spy hamster movie.
No, that sounds familiar. Never saw it.
Oh yeah, no, I've never seen it either. But it is dumb. What about the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies?
What?
Alvin and the Chipmunks movies. Pretty good.
Okay, I don't.
Pretty
I
good.
need fully animated films here, brother.
I guess those are kind of like half live. That's a weird thing they don't seem to do anymore. Is the half live action thing.
Half what?
Like with like live action people interacting with animated characters. That was a big thing for a while, but I haven't actually. Fuck, Sonic just did that.
Yeah, but is it also just because they're just better?
CG's getting better
now,
or animation?
So it's not that it hasn't happened.
Well,
just
animation
better, like,
necessarily hasn't gotten better. I mean, you could because I mean, 2D drawn animation of like the Disney classics, it's just a different art style. Yeah, I mean,
well, I understand that.
Technically less impressive than
there's a reason they didn't want Sonic to be more realistic. We all know that.
Yeah,
they could have made him a realistic looking animal. I get that they wanted him to be more animated, but I'm saying in general with the other movies that might have come across as an animated character with the real person might just be looked at now as, oh, it's a creature. It's just animated very well to where it's, CGI and it's an animal.
Yeah, I'm thinking of stuff like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which has like clear, like in the
Space Jam 2 is coming sometime, dude.
Oh yeah, and Space Jam as well is a good example as well. But
I have a question as we wrap this up.
Yeah, go for it.
What would you think about doing like comparison of like ranking like we were talking about Pixar, like ranking Pixar movies, going through ranks like
that means I have to go back and watch all these Pixar movies.
No. We don't have to go like back and watch, just like at the beginning of episodes.
But I haven't seen them.
You guys want to see that? Let us know. We'll do it. I'm trapping Nate into this right now. This is not planning. I'm planning stuff for podcast episodes.
Can we do a ranking of
so he's forced? No, we'll do different ones. Yeah, we'll do different ones. We do different adult movies. This episode's done. We're done. Thanks for listening.
All right,
that's a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That's where you listen to us.
Please, bro. Please.
If you listen to this because you listened to the Tiger King episode and came over from that, I know that's what we started with. So I don't know if you made it this long. But yeah, this is us being a little more in depth.
Thanks for listening, and this is our much more of our normal stuff. But
we weren't quite as we usually start off with some silly hits, silly.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, we talked about a lot today, so we appreciate it. Go follow at That's Movies Brother on Instagram as well. Keep up to date. We're trying to update that more, and follow me at Tyler C. Gillette. And if you want to plug anything, Nate, go for it. But we all know.
I just figured maybe people should try and, get their audiobooks through our audibletrial.com/That's Movies Brother link. Just a reminder. Don't want to do a full one here. Just a reminder. It's okay. If you want any audiobooks through audible.com, use our link. Come on, bro.
But that's been a brother movie.
But that's been movies, and we're brothers. We're not actually.
Get out of here. All right, bye. 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 All right, bye.